Hello everyone, I hope you guys are learning well at home and are staying safe. Now for today's math lesson, we're going to cover these three questions on page 6 of your chapter 8 notes. We're going to learn how to plot quadratic graphs. Okay, so we'll look at example 5, example 6 and example 7. I hope you guys have already done part A of every question. You've already tried to plot the curves. But before we go into these three questions, right, let me just recap what you all learned last year about linear graphs. Okay, so for any graph that you all have learned last year, right, you recall that there are two axes, the y-axis and the x-axis. The y-axis is the vertical axis and the x-axis is the horizontal axis. Now please use a ruler to draw these axes. My lines are wobbly because I'm drawing it on the computer, right? Okay, but for y'all, please use a ruler. So once we have the axes out, basically the question will tell you the scale of the graph. So let's say they tell you that the x-axis goes from -3 to 3 and the scale is 2 cm represents 1 unit. What does that mean? That means one big square is 1 unit. So it's 1, 2, 3. And then on the left hand side, it will be -1, -2, -3. Okay? And then same thing for the y-axis, you follow the scale given in the question. So if they say 2 cm to 1 unit, it will be 1, 2, and below this it will be -1, -2. Okay, so for the y-axis, please write the numbers on the left hand side, and for the x-axis, please write the numbers below the axis. Okay, now the point where the two axes cross, right, this is known as the origin, represented by a O. Okay, and that point will be 0, 0. Now, what about coordinates? How do we represent coordinates? Basically, for any number on the x-axis, for example, the y value is 0. So, if I want to find the coordinates of this point, for example, it is always the x value first, then comma y value. This is the coordinate of this point, 3, 0. X value is 3, y value is 0. Okay. Similarly, on the y-axis, let's say I want to find what is this point, right? It will be 0, -2, because all the x values along the y-axis is 0. So this point here, right, this point here is 0, -2. That's how we write the coordinates. Okay, so let's try plotting a line over here. Okay, recall that all linear graphs, right, the equations are of the form y = mx plus c. So for example, let's say I'm given the equation y = x plus 2 and they told me to plot this line, right? What will I do? Number one, I'll come up with a table of values. A very simple one. For straight lines, I just need 3 points. So let's start with, for example, when x is 0, I sub in 0 here, y will be equal to 2. Correct? And then let's say I sub in x equals to -1. When x is -1, -1 plus 2, y will be equal to 1. Okay? And then when x is -2, or okay, when x is 1, y is 3, right? So it's already out of this. So I just want to use x -2, y will be equal to 0. So let's say I come up with these 3 random points and then I start plotting. So the first coordinate is 0, 2, right? That means when x is 0, y is 2, that will be over here. X 0, y 2. Second point is when x is -1, y is 1, so it is over here. X -1, y 1. And when x is -2, y is 0, so it's over here. When x is -2, y is 0. Now the 3 points should form a nice straight line when you connect them. So let me try to connect it. Okay, and then I label this line y = x plus 2. Okay, which is the equation of the line. So this is how you plot a linear graph. Now, recall what you learned about the equation. Y = x plus 2 is in the form y = mx plus c, right? Now, what are m and c? M is actually the gradient of the line, and that tells us the steepness of the line. Okay, recall that the formula for gradient is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So for example, in this case, right, if I want to choose 2 points and find the gradient, let's say I choose this one, 0, 2, and this point here, -2, 0, and I want to find the gradient. So let's say this is my x1, y1. Let's say this is my x2, y2. Okay, I'm going to apply formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So 2 minus 0 over 0 minus -2. Correct. 0 minus -2. So this is just 2 divided by 2, which means my gradient is 1. So what does this mean? Basically, for every increase in increase in 1 unit on the x-axis, right, my y also increases by 1 unit. So for example, you see from here to here, right, when x goes from -1 to 0, y also increases from 1 to 2. So for every unit increase in x, there's 1 unit increase in y. That's what the 1 over here represents, the gradient. So comparing it with this equation, my m is actually equal to 1. The coefficient of x is 1, which is the gradient. Now how about c? The c over here represents the y-intercept, which is 2 in this case. So c equals to the y-intercept, and in this case it is 2. What does that mean? It means that my line that I plotted will cut the y-axis at 2, as you can see over here. Okay, do you see that the red line cuts the y-axis at 2, which means that is the y-intercept, and I can easily find that from the equation straight away. So these are all the things that you learned last year. Let me try to make it in one page. These are all the things that you learned last year. Number 1, you should know what are the x and y axes. Number 2, given an equation, you should know how to come up with a table of values. Number 3, you should know how to plot the points, okay, with a cross. So cross, 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 and then connect them all with a straight line. Number 4, you should know how to find the gradient. And number 5, how to find the y-intercept. So if you understand all this, right, we can move on to this year's topic on how to plot quadratic graphs. Now, the basic steps are all the same. So you're still going to have your x's, you're still going to have a table of values, you're still going to have to plot points. The difference is now we're moving away from linear equations and we're going to quadratic equations. Okay.